The fact of the matter is that the Muslim responses to the non-Muslim world are based upon the dichotomous division of the world into Dar al-Islam, the realm where Islam is dominant, and Dar al-Harb, the rest of the world. At least in theory, and for Islamists in practice, this dichotomous division of humanity means that a state of war exists between Muslims and non-Muslims, and that every Muslim is obliged to bring an end to the state of war, either through dawah, the calling of the unbeliever to accept the relationship with God signified by submission to Islam, or through the dhimma, that is the pact of submission that terminates the state of war with Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians. Strictly speaking, this tradition envisages no such thing as enduring peace between faithful Muslims and infidels, save as dhimmis, humiliated subjects and subordinates. There can be a truce, a hudna, when combat appears unlikely to succeed. However, there are no inalienable rights for non-Muslim subject parties. All rights, and this is the meaning of the dhimma, are contractual and conditional, based strictly upon fulfillment of the dhimma. I also believe, and I write about it in my book, that the reason why Turkey has never seen fit to acknowledge its role in the Armenian genocide is because in the eyes of the Turks, the Armenians, a subordinate people, broke the dhimma, and therefore they were a free target. Another one that I would call to your attention, and he's in many ways much more important, is Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradari, one of the most influential of all Muslim contemporary scholars. And he deals with the issue of dhimmitude. He has 40 million viewers on Al Jazeera TV every week. He is the author of over 80 books. He has been refused entry into the United States and been barred from entering the United Kingdom as a threat to peace and security, although he remains a trustee of an Oxford University Institute of Islamic Studies. Although controversial, al-Qaradari is definitely a major Muslim leader capable of influencing millions. And, I have to tell you, as president of my university, I had to deal with the hiring of Muslims, and I did it, especially when they were not in fields where there could possibly be any trouble. But I have to tell you, although I used to enter into dialogues with some leading Muslim authorities, people like Zaki Badawi, who was the principal of the London Muslim College, and The Guardian called him the most influential Muslim leader in Britain. And another one that I spent a lot of time with was Ismail al-Faruqi, who some of you Philadelphians may remember. He was finally killed, I suspect, by another faction. But I got to the point where I don't want to talk to these people. I will not enter into dialogue with them because I know they are lying through their teeth. And I wouldn't say that in another audience. And I'm in a particularly delicate position. I'm a trustee of my university. I teach Muslim students. I'm no longer the president, but I am president emeritus. I have hired Muslim scholars. the only place where I raised a question about a Muslim scholar who has applied for an appointment to teach Islamic studies in our department. And I can't go into details except to say one thing. In his description of his ambitions, he said he sees his role as teacher as imparting dawah, that is, imparting, bringing people into Islam. That is such a contradiction to what the academy should be. What the academy should be is to give the facts as objectively as you possibly can. I've had Muslim students in my classes for 10 years, and nobody has ever complained. The reason, it wouldn't do them any good to complain. When you have my position at the university, nevertheless, I look around at Jewish organizations, and I'm horrified, utterly horrified. This is not in my speech, but I have to say this. I'm an alumnus of the Jewish Theological Seminary. So I got today in the mail an invitation to a panel discussion on Muslim-Jewish relations sponsored by the Jewish Theological Seminary, in which the chairperson of the moderator of the panel was going to be Ingrid Mattson, a convert to Islam, to Wahhabi Islam, who is, I believe, the head of the Islamic Society of America. She's at the Hartford Theological Seminary, which they took over. It was a Congregationalist seminary originally. And then they have a man who goes by the English name of Sherwood or Sherman Jackson, who's a younger black Muslim scholar, who's, I've been told by Alicia Lappin, who knows about him more than I do, that he's been horrible as far as Muslim-Jewish relations. And the third member of the panel is Chancellor Arnold Eisen of the Jewish Theological Seminary. Now, for a lot of reasons, I respect him, but I have to say that he has been badly advised when it comes to this thing. And it goes on all the time. Wherever you have Jewish community relations, they must have dialogue. You can only have dialogue with people who are willing to talk to you. Let me say a couple of things that are not in my speech, which are important here. Some of you, I know, have been to the International Scholars Conference on the Holocaust in the German Church from time to time. I was a member of that conference from 1970 till the present. Franklin Littell has been a good, dear friend of mine. Anyhow, when I spoke in memory of Franklin Littell, one of the most important things I said was this. I said, you know, I have been known as a controversial Jewish theologian. And I have taken positions with which many Jewish theologians took issue, and certainly many Christian theologians took issue. Never once in the 50 years in which I was in dialogue with these people did I ever fear injury as a result of what I said to them. Not once. I can tell you now that I do not feel the same way about Muslims. And part of the problem is you don't know who the villains are. The problem is takia, dissemblance, see. And you take this major who killed 37 people in Fort Hood, Major Hassan. Of course, he was open about it. But we had at the University of Bridgeport, our distinction, we had Shahzad, who got his BA from us. He got his MA from us. I presided at the commencement where he got these degrees. Perfectly nice fellow. And all of a sudden, he not only wanted to blow up in Times Square to do maximum damage, but he was already planning on a second one. Oh, but he was such a nice person. So I have to tell you, I've become very, very tight about this. And I don't make public statements, but I think that most of the dialogue is absolutely fraudulent. Okay. Let me just conclude. I'm leaving a lot out, but let me conclude with, I have to read you a couple of things that Karadari says. This is one of the greatest, most influential Muslim scholars. And when the Red Ken, the mayor of London, brought him to London, oh, did they make a fuss over him. And anti-Semitism never bothered him. Oh, Allah, take your enemies, the enemies of Islam. Oh, Allah, take the Jews, the treacherous aggressors. This is after the Gaza business. This profligate, cunning, arrogant band of people. Oh, Allah, they have spread much tyranny and corruption in the land. Pour your wrath upon them. That sounds like Shefach Hamatka ala goyim asher lo yidu'ucha. Pour out thy wrath upon the nations that know you not, which you say at the Passover thing. And then he goes on. We wait for the we wait for the revenge of Allah, and he concludes. And this is the point I wanted to point out. Falsely, he makes the statement, the Islamic countries received the Jews with open arms when they were banished from Europe. Oh, in the Middle Ages, they got a somewhat better deal than they got in Spain, where they had to get out or be killed. But the Jews turned their back on us, and we have become their victim. And he then characterizes the Zionist settlement in Palestine as the work of plunderers who acted arrogantly toward the servants of Allah in the land of Allah. He reminds his listeners that Allah has already punished the Jews for spreading corruption in the land twice. He mentions Nebuchadnezzar, he mentions the Romans, and then he complains of Jewish ingratitude. And this was the point I wanted to make. The Jews have lived as dhimmis in our lands. That is, in his eyes, they had signed the contract to be humiliated, subordinate subjects for a long time. And no Muslim violated the covenant with them. That is an untruth. Despite this, they were not faithful to the dhimma, the covenant. When they were banished from Europe, they found no compassionate bosom, no cave to shelter them except for the lands of Islam. But when the Jews gained influence, they turned their back on them, and we have become their victims. In essence, al-Qaradari's complaint is that the Jews have violated the dhimma, the pact of surrender and submission, which they or their ancestors had concluded with the Muslim overlord,